Vanakkam, Ayubowan, good evening, TEDxColombo. It's such a pleasure to be with you this evening. So I recently heard this stat. They said that Sri Lanka has officially crossed 1 million tourists in 2025. And we're not even done yet. This is amazing. We want to tell people about Sri Lanka as this beautiful travel destination. But sometimes, the tourists who come to Sri Lanka love Sri Lanka so much that they don't want to leave. Like the Portuguese, and then the Dutch, and then our friends from across the pond, the English. These fellows came here, they're like, oh, Harimalasana, everything's so good. And they overextended their visa by give or take a couple of 100 years. They loved it. So I have a theory. The theory is this. The theory is that Sri Lankan tour companies and tour guides, they really want to let the tourists experience a little bit of what our people and our ancestors went through during these times of oppression. So what they do is secretly, without telling them, they introduce every single tourist, at least once in their life, to a Sri Lankan Ayurvedic massage. Listen, raise your hands if you've actually had an Ayurvedic massage, okay? That's like, okay, there's a few of you. Just come and find me after the TEDx event because Pastor Kevin will pray for you because you've been traumatized. You've been traumatized. Last year was the first and the last time that I would get a Sri Lankan Ayurvedic massage. Look, I'm happily married. But after what Sunil did to me on that bed, I had to quietly, without telling my wife, go to my Facebook profile and change it from I'm married to it is complicated. I'm what you call a third culture kid. I was born in Sri Lanka, lived here till I was 12 years old, then moved to Oman during my high school years. And then when I was 18, I went to the United States. And then I met this lovely girl, a Cuban, Chilean, and American. And so, yeah, you can tell that over the last couple of decades, I've been massaged by a couple of different cultures and experiences. And for the most part, these experiences have been rich. They have been really gratifying. But I would be lying to you if I were to tell you that there are not days and weeks that I go without telling myself, hey, where am I really from? Like, why am I here? And maybe some of you can relate. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you might not even have traveled that much, but some of you are like, I have tried to fit in so much in my current experience, but I can't. Maybe some of you are plagued with fear of the now and fear of the next, because you know that your current moment has an expiration date. Maybe you are here because deep down you know that you're a leader. You have something to share with the world. But there's a scramble in your heart and there's a scramble in your mind. And if that's you, welcome to the club. The next few moments are for us. The one common thing that's tied all these experiences together has been the second most consumed beverage on the planet. The first is what? Water. Literally water. The second is a simple cup of tea. My earliest memory of my father and my family and my upbringing was actually my dad making some tetani, some kirite for us. My sister and I, right before I put on my white shirt, my blue shorts, run to Peradeniya Road and get on the van that will take me to St. Anthony's College, Kadugastota. He actually learned how to make tea from his tata, his dad, his appa, my tata, my grandfather, Anthony Matthew, who was a Kanakapillai, a superintendent in the tea plantations at Yadanside Estate under the British rule. But when I went to the Middle East, to Oman, I had the distinct pleasure of drinking karak chai and masala chai, where my friends from India and Pakistan and Afghanistan introduced me to the world of spiced milk teas. And over the last 5 years, we've built this community around chai and meaningful living and justice. It's been an amazing experience. So for the next couple of minutes that we have, I want to share with you why your next cup of chai might change your life. And I want to bring three ingredients to you really quickly. Now, when you talk about chai, now any conversation about chai is incomplete without talking about the terroir of chai, the terroir. Now, when you talk about the terroir of chai, you're talking about the natural conditions, the climate, the topography that brings the tea into life. So whenever you taste tea, you're not just tasting tea, you're tasting sunlight. You're tasting rain. You're tasting clouds. And that's why a tea that's grown in Ranwat tea, that's grown about 6,000 feet above sea level here in Sri Lanka, or Kenyan BOP that's cultivated in Africa, have distinct flavors. This brings me to the first and foundational ingredient of what I think will form a culture-rich, meaning-forward, and service-focused life, and that is character. Character. I believe character is the inner foundations that's present in every single human being that gives rise to their thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and actions. It can be actually compared to as the terroir of our beings. And what type of character, how can we cultivate this character that we need for such a life? When I look at the tea plant, I see two realities. I see that character is formed by the commitments that we make. And number two, character is forged by the confrontations that we face. You see, the tea plant, in order for it to grow, it has to make some commitments with the soil and the sun. It has to make an agreement with the sun to be like, hey, are we going to photosynthesize now or later? It has to probably contend with the bugs on the leaves, and they chew on the leaves, but something interesting happens that changes the process of the tea, without which we won't actually get some really interesting qualities of tea. Character is formed by the confrontations, the commitments that we make, and the confrontations that we face. But character is not enough. Do you know that all leaf teas, whether it's green tea, black tea, oolong tea, white tea, silver tea, all come from the same plant? You know this, right? Okay. Shout out somebody. What's the scientific name of the plant? Just shout out, anybody. Someone said that. Camelia Sinensis. Okay, uncle, find me afterwards, give you a voucher for a massage. Okay, so chai may be diverse in its history, right? But it is similar in its biology. And that's why when you have chai in Sri Lanka or India or Pakistan, they all come from the same plant. Which leads me to the second ingredient, which I believe will form a culture-rich, meaning-forward, service-focused life, and that is curiosity. Curiosity. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in his commencement speech at the Oberlin College in 1965, says, hey, whatever affects you directly affects me indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I can be ought to be. And this is the interrelated structure of reality. You see, if that's true, then regardless of how we identify ourselves, we all have a common humanity. And that's why curiosity is vital. And I like to define curiosity as the careful, the loving exploration of the new. There's a proverb in Africa that goes like this: a fish knows the beauty of water once it's outside of it. As long as the fish is in the water, it's like, oh, what is water? But it's outside, it's like, ooh, I want to know what's water. When you are encountering an other, something different, a different perspective, a different problem, something that you're not used to, that's when, and you practice curiosity, that's when new flavors that you see in you that you didn't previously realize. And in a world that's fragmenting your focus, in a world that's fighting to get your attention, practicing curiosity, being present in the moment, is an act of a revolution. Talking about revolution, did you know that this history about masala chai? It's very interesting. 1901. The India Tea Association was made up of mostly British tea estate owners. And so they were like, hey, we need to make sure that Indians drink the tea that we're building. We're sending all this stuff to Europe. We want the Indians to drink tea. And so they pushed cheap tea to the masses. They set up stalls everywhere, railway stations, religious gatherings. And they pushed this cheap tea. And by the end of the 20th century, Indians consumed more than 70% of the tea that was produced in India. And the tea that was produced was bitter and a little bit of milk and some sugar. But something happened between World War I and the 1930s. Chai wallahs, chai baristas in the railway stations, they began to crush spices that they used in their curries and stuff. They said they put cardamom and peppercorn and cinnamon and cloves into the tea right before giving it to the customer. You see, it was a way for them to say, look, this is our thing. This is our thing. And so masala chai actually became a beverage of protest against empire, which eventually catalyzed the Indian independence from the British rule, which also, I believe, influenced our independence from colonial forces. And that's why I believe the third ingredient is courage. It's courage. I believe a cup of chai is a cup of courage. A cup of tetani is a cup of perseverance. Chai memorializes in taste the legacy of those who have alchemized their pain into purpose, their misery into meaning, and their suffering into salvation. And if that's true, then that courage is actually, listen, is not the absence of fear. It's actually the befriending of fear. Because you see, I thought for the longest time that fear is the thing that we fight to get to success. But no. Fear, I believe, is not what you fight. Fear is where you fight. Fear is your body's motion center telling you, hey, you're about to step into an arena that's going to change you, mold you, make you into a person that you never knew was possible. And to be courageous is sometimes to look at the thing in front of you, the thing that's causing you pain and suffering and misery, and be like, there you are. Long time no see. And the TEDxColombo. Vanga. Come, let's have some chai. When fear becomes your friend, new flavors are unlocked. Like the boy who ran away from his house at 11 years old. He gets to the big city, homeless, trying to find some work to do. Eventually finds work at a motel as a servant. So he's working very hard. While he's working, a 45-year-old man notices him. He's like, this guy has a great work ethic, good character. So he approached the boy and he says, look, I need some help. I'm here for research. I need a translator. Can you translate for me? So the boy, nothing to lose, put a few of his belongings in his rucksack, and off they went on this man's motorcycle. For the next 5 years, this boy and this man would traverse the farthest corners of the land, drinking so much chai, so much tea. The boy would become this man's confidant, and the man would become this boy's only father figure. The time can come for this boy, this man to actually leave the country for his research. The research is done. So he knew that if he were to go back, this boy at best would be back in the streets, or at best be back in the motel or in the streets. So he decided to take the boy, enroll him to the nearest school, and he said, look, I don't know what he needs, but here's my information. Tell me, and I'll provide whatever he needs. The man left. They didn't think they were going to see each other ever again. The boy went through school, studied hard, met somebody, fell in love, got married, had kids. They had 2 kids. They named the daughter Kylie Wilson, and they named their son Kevin Wilson. You see, the boy in this story is none other than my own father, who is actually here today. It's him right there. Yeah. It's the summer of 2014. My dad's in America for my graduation, and he says, Kevin, you're graduating? Good, awesome. You didn't waste my money? Amazing. But I need to find out if Ron is still alive. They haven't seen each other for 40 years. So we went on Google. I asked Uncle Google, hey, Ron, where is he? So looked up some addresses, found an address. We went, drove, hills of Pasadena, driving, and then we entered through these gates, and I'm entering into what looks like a jungle, really. And then I knew that this has to be the place. It looks like candy. And I'm walking in, and I knock on the door. And this older 70-year-old man opens the door. It's like, I don't want to buy anything. And from behind me, my dad says, Ron? And then Ron squints and he says, Wilson? Dad pushed me aside. Dad and Ron hug so tight that I thought that at that moment that this would probably be their last hug, Ron's last hug as a human being. And there we were in the living room. Ron and my dad, they're talking, giggling, shape-shifted back to their younger days, reliving their motorcycle diaries of going through Sri Lanka. And I'm trying to hold back tears, even right now, in this moment. I'm holding back tears as I'm looking at this moment because I realized in that moment that I wouldn't be here right now, that I won't be able to share this moment with you right now, if not for their curious, courageous character. that transcended boundaries, that transcended culture, that transcended every difficulty, where they were able to see each other as human beings. And so I invite you, my friend, to cultivate your character. I invite you to practice curiosity. I invite you to befriend fear. Because your story is neither an anecdote nor an afterthought, but a saga. A multicolored tapestry of tales representing a genealogy of difficulties, joys, and hopes, all tied together by a single thread of courage, bonded by the thick adhesive of relationships, and held together by a single cup of tea, flavoring not only your life, but the lives of those who are yet to be born. Thank you.